I kind of miss the fact that I can't go, hey, digital wildcatters. Colliders just doesn't have the same buzz.
I just say like the 2-power, hey, welcome Collide.
Welcome Collide.
Yeah.
There we go. I like that.
Hey, Collide.
Hey, Collide. All right. Hey, Collide. Welcome to an emergency episode of BDE. Mark, there are a bunch of names that I'm not going to be able to pronounce.
Is it an emergency?
Sure.
Okay.
Like the edge to it, maybe. Emergency BDE. Well, no, it's timely news.
Well, we got a live one coming up on Monday.
So on Monday, what date is Monday? Is that
11th.
the 8th? Oh, the 11th. Okay, so on August 11th, 10 a.m. Central Time on Collide, we're going to do BDE live. We'll be able to take questions. This is going old school. That's how BDE actually started when Colin and I started doing it.
Used to sit up at like the news desk, the TV news
I love
desk.
that. Colin didn't like that, but I love that. So anyway, we will do that next Monday. But real quick, story popped up. We need to talk about what happened in Brazil.
Yeah, BP had its earnings call on Tuesday, and it was like a throwback to late 90s, early 2000s to hear BP talk like an oil and gas exploration company. In fact, going through the entire video of prepared remarks in the presentation, which I don't typically do for the super majors anymore, but the renewables have been shoved to the far back of the deck, and there's very limited conversation or discussion of what's going on there. Clearly, they want the focus to be on, and it's been an impressive year for them. I think they've announced 10 discoveries worldwide. This one that was really in the spotlight on the call is about 400 kilometers offshore from Rio in the Santos Basin, pre-salt. I want to say it's in doing the meters conversion. It's in about or maybe more than 8,000 feet of water depth. It's called the Boomerang prospect or structure. Reports were 500 meters of gross hydrocarbon column and a structural aerial extent of 300 square kilometers. So this thing, just
That's
on those
big.
metrics are massive. No volumetrics, oil in place numbers, nothing like that. But as with a lot of offshore South American exploration provinces, there's always the looming question of, how much gas is there? And then in addition to that, how much CO2? And they did mention that from rig fluid samples that they observed, quote unquote, elevated levels of CO2.
Because I went out on X this morning and kind of did my hey, what are people hearing on it? And got a generally reliable source who just pinged back and said, problem is, if in a previous life he or she had studied it, and the problem is the gas, because when you look at the infrastructure control, it's Petrobras and the government, and just makes it almost dead on arrival, because if you don't have a home for that gas.
So you're talking about hydrocarbon gas in
Yes.
terms of infrastructure and control.
Yeah, exactly. So because you're not going to be able to flare
when you
it
add
off there.
in the complication of CO2
Oh yeah,
that you have to do
CO2.
something with,
Yeah.
right? Who knows? I read through the Q&A and the response to questions about level of concern, are you worried, et cetera. We're not particularly concerned. They've sent fluid samples from various depths in their downhole sampling off to independent third-party labs, and it takes some time to get those results back. But in the meantime, there's kind of a CO2 cloud, a little bit of a cloud, maybe a cirrus cloud, the way they would characterize it.
Right. So BP, just so you know, we at Collide know a lot about Bitcoin mining. So if you wind up with your natural gas out there and you don't want to flare it and you're not able to cut a deal for the natural gas markets in Brazil. We can Bitcoin mine. We can walk you through that.
Yeah, and associated gas, particularly offshore anywhere, and certainly offshore South America. You see it up in the Guyana Basin. You certainly see it in the Santos Basin. Really the structural question is always ultimately, what are you going to do, or what are you going to be able to do to develop the infrastructure? What does the domestic market look like? But when we're talking about CO2, if they're high CO2 concentrations, just from a technical standpoint, you're talking about equipment and tubulars and all of those things that are way, way more expensive. So it ultimately puts
400 kilometers is a long way to go.
It is a long way.
Yeah.
And so it's 0.62 times, so it's 240 miles, give or take.
Houston to Austin.
Yeah, it's a long way. And, water depths of not trivial distances. A lot of, we've done it before. We've done drilling, exploration, development in 8,000 to 10,000 feet of water. So, it was enough to allow BP to outperform on the day by a fairly wide margin, although the stock kind of held a gain of a little north of 1% when the group was fractionally down. Its peer group was fractionally down. So I think there's, on this, there's going to be some wait and see, but just the basics of aerial extent of the structure, and then the hydrocarbon column itself, if it all comes together, that it can be commercial, is I think going to be one of the biggest discoveries in the last 5 years, maybe 10. And so they are working really hard at messaging. I would say leaning into an aggressiveness on the exploration and production side, which is, comes on the heels of all the board and activist turmoil that they've had. And clearly the stock has underperformed in its peer group for a meaningfully long period of time. So, are they kind of back to the future here? And hopefully this one for them turns out to be, CO2 is not problematic. We can develop it with FPSO, et cetera. We don't have to spend a bunch of extra capital on dealing with a problem gas and CO2, but it's going to be a while. And as investors and analysts and Twitter mavens are going to be out there speculating on all kinds of things around this as it relates to BP. But, the market's not in the mood for most oil and gas stocks to give any kind of advanced credit in the form of a multiple expansion. And I don't think even something this headline grabbing is any different.
Yeah. At the end of the day, what I always say about BP is that I've never met anyone that worked for BP previously that I wasn't incredibly impressed with. One of the best.
They have a lot of smart people.
Yeah, one of the best management teams, if not the best management team I ever worked with. Former BP, Jane Stricker over at the Houston Partnership, former BP, incredibly impressive. Just tick on down the list. Every former BP employee I meet is always impressive. Never understood why, as a company, it's been the shit show that it's been. But
well, I think it's largely in the realm of equity investors and their followers, and you look at all the strategic flip flops or pivots that they've made. Got way out over their skis on really what I think it was Doomberg that came up with the term virtue stepping, which means you're actually taking actions. And in BP's case, they spent a bunch on offshore wind leases. They're exiting and selling U.S. onshore wind. They're peeling back a lot of those things that were certainly drags on their return on capital employed and performance and metrics and the way people looked at it. And so, and that's the holy grail for the super majors, is sustained high levels of return on capital employed. And so, the optics of the BP story and the messaging that they're doing now is we are flat out on our global exploration story. And, I think the term they used was appraisal will be done at pace. But, something like this, getting back to Boomerangay, that's, what are we, August of 2025? I don't know how long the appraisal program will be. Of course, we could get results on the fluid analysis that say it's a non-starter. Hopefully that's not the case. But, we're looking at being really hard pressed, I think, to get first oil before the end of the decade.
Yeah, no, totally. One last thing. So Monday, August 11th, 10 a.m. Central, we're doing it live. We'll take questions and all that. We'll have a full run of show, so expect an hour, I bet.
Yeah.
Real quick, I think I saw the best concert I've ever seen in my life last weekend. My buddy German and I drove to Dallas to go see My Chemical Romance. And just to frame this, they're doing a stadium tour. So we are in Globe Life Field where the Rangers play. So 45,000, 50,000 people. When I went and saw My Chemical Romance at the House of Blues that seats 2,200 here in Houston during the Black Parade album and tour, they didn't even sell out. So kind of amazing what going away for 10 years can do for you. But that might have been the greatest show I've ever seen in my life. And I will tell you, at least half to 2/3 of it is just the Black Parade album. For those of you that don't know, the Black Parade album is the story, it's a concept album, story of a young man getting cancer and passing into the afterlife. And that really hit home given the struggles I've had in my life with friends that get brain cancer. And so anyway, it hit heavy. It didn't hurt that I'd had so much vodka. But if you get to go see My Chemical Romance on the stadium tour, totally worth it.
And what these bands are finding out is it's been a long evolution, although it felt like when it was occurring, it was a revolution. The only way to really generate revenue is through live tours.
Yeah.
And so,
which is crazy because the Beatles stopped touring in the 60s because it was more profitable to go make albums.
Not true anymore.
Not true anymore.
Although exactly. You can make a record, at least my record was a dozen years ago. I think it was all of $16,000 for everything. In fact, I got the invoices for our session work. So the backline drums and bass were session guys, and one of them, Glenn Worf, the bassist, was like he's legendary. So I get this invoice. So it's got all the union stuff on it, the cartage, and we had, I forget what they call the segments of recording time in a recording studio, but we got all that done across the 3 segments in one day. And my bill for each one of those session musicians was $300.
That's crazy. Daughter Charlie, one of my favorite songs she's done is Drab Av is the name of the band. It's a song called Curb, and they literally recorded it on the iPhone. And it's
really?
Out there on Apple Music, Spotify, everywhere. So, all right.
Well, look forward to
Monday,
our latest live session. And we'll harken back to the old days of
glory days. They'll pass you by. So,
you and Colin with his fresh haircut, sitting up there at the Digital Wildcatters news desk.
Oh yeah, no,
with the cliche Houston backdrop. I noticed yesterday sitting in here, I did a couple of sessions. The Wildcatters movie or black gold movie poster. That's really cool.
That is cool.
Need one of Giant.
We do need one of Giant. All right, Clyde. We will see you guys on Monday.